I want to briefly touch on something I've discussed the last 2 days, because we are right in the teeth of this battle on the rule of law. Follow the rule of law, they say. Even some conservatives, pseudo-conservatives, Republicans, out there on TV and radio, politicians. Look, the law is a law. We don't get to pick and choose. Really, we don't get to pick and choose. This is the theme I began a few days ago, and I want to continue it. I mentioned the other day sanctuary cities. Mayors and governors violating federal immigration law. Mayors and governors giving safe haven to felons because they're illegal aliens. Have any of them been thrown in prison? Any court orders against them? Anybody beating their chest about the rule of law? Mayors and governors and Obama violating our immigration laws. An entire class of people are in this country illegally violating our laws. Yet we're not even allowed to call them illegal aliens because, people aren't illegal. People aren't illegal. Can't deport them, right? I've got a story here. You can't even ask people if they're here legally. You can't even ask them if they're citizens if you give them a job. That's discrimination. So don't tell me about the rule of law on the left and phony Republicans and phony conservatives when this country's full of lawlessness, starting at the top. Starting with the abandonment of our constitutional law. Starting with the Supreme Court and the President and the Congress. The entire Constitution has been turned upside down. And federal courts and media types go on and on about following the law. Anthony Kennedy didn't follow the law when he wrote the decision in June about same-sex marriage. He defied the law. And he knows it. He abused our system of government. He abused his office. What they mean, ladies and gentlemen, is not the rule of law. What they mean is you will accept the fate of this nation as dictated by the left, or you're going to be punished. That's what they mean, as they try to institutionalize and enshrine their leftist agenda into the law so they can use the law against the law abiding. We got the Black Lives Matters movement, which is the old Black Panthers movement. We've got Farrakhan screaming at the top of his lungs about 10,000 black soldiers going out and killing white people. We have organizations targeting cops. What happened to the rule of law? Why isn't Farrakhan in handcuffs and taken off the prison? Oh, that's different. Different than what? Meanwhile, the Tea Party movement, without a hint of lawlessness, without a hint of violence, without a hint of racism, is portrayed as dangerous, potentially violent, and racist. Don't give me this rule of law crap. This has nothing to do with the rule of law. Just because a court issues an opinion doesn't make it lawful. Just because a president uses his pen and his phone doesn't make it lawful. Tyranny comes in many forms. History tells us that. Our framers told us this. And we live in a post-constitutional period, as I've said time and again. And these are the consequences. You don't see atheists going to prison. You don't see secularists going to prison, do you? They're not thrown in jail. They're accommodated. They're accommodated at every step. Every Christmas in the public square, you want to have a manger scene. Somehow that's outlawed by the Constitution and the First Amendment. Since when? I hear dumb people going on and on about separation of church and state. Well, as a constitutional matter, the phrase separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. That comes out of a letter written by Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptists. Thomas Jefferson, a great man, but here's the problem. Thomas Jefferson wasn't even at the Constitutional Convention. He was in France. He had minimal say about the Constitution. But that aside, what do you mean separation of church and state? What the framers did is create a tolerant society, not a faithless society. Or there'd be no free exercise of religion clause, a liberty clause in the First Amendment, would there? So they didn't want to create a theocracy, and they didn't create a theocracy. But they didn't create a secular society either, where anything that has the hint of religion or faith, anything that has the hint of God, is to be banned from the public square. That's new. That's new. That's not the Constitution. But you got to follow the law. Well, what if the judges don't follow the law? How can it possibly be? How can it possibly be that the law of the land that these judges swear to uphold, the law of the land under which they have whatever authority they have, can be abused by them, and then we are forced to live by the law of the judiciary? The court had no business whatsoever getting into this issue of same-sex marriage. None. And that's why we have a problem in Kentucky. Not because of the lady in Kentucky, but because of Justice Kennedy and the 4 other justices. That's why we have a problem in Kentucky. Not because of the federal Constitution, not because of any state constitution, but because of 5 justices who acted outside the law, who violated the law. And now we have people saying, follow the rule of law. Really? What they really mean is follow the rule of Anthony Kennedy. And of course, the lower courts are going to enforce this. That's an entire branch of the federal government, the judiciary. We had a lawful court order. She wouldn't abide by it. Oh, and she's a public official. She should have resigned or be impeached. Why is that? Because she won't follow the rule of law. Well, then Anthony Kennedy should resign or be impeached. And why is it when it comes to Barack Obama, the most lawless president in American history? In so many ways, it's hard to even keep track. Why isn't the rule of law enforced against him? You can't even utter the word impeachment. No, can't say that, can't say that. Why not? Because he's a leftist, that's why. He's a leftist violating the Constitution to advance his ideology. Christians in this country, of which most of you are in my audience, you're having to defend yourselves and defend your faith. You're not bothering anybody. You're not imposing your will on anybody. You want to be left alone. But the left won't leave you alone. The courts won't leave you alone. Governors won't leave you alone. Politicians won't leave you alone. And they are insisting that you do things that you do not want to do. And don't believe these people who say she's a public official. That's different. Did they say that when it came to the baker? Did they say that when it came to the caterer? Did they say that when it came to the pizza parlor? No, they didn't. Shut them down, they said. Shut them down. These are the new fascists, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't care if they're wearing black robes and they're on the Supreme Court or not. This isn't about the rule of law. It's about the rule of the left. Because all the laws aren't enforced, are they? Look at our borders. Look at Obama with his fiats. Look at Obama going around changing the names of mountains in every way possible. Even more fundamentally, where is it written in the Constitution that the executive branch passes more laws than the legislative branch? Where is it written in the Constitution that this massive bureaucracy, this fourth branch of government within the executive branch, can institute 3,800 laws a year without any checks and balances, without the consent of the governed, without anything? Where's that written? And by the way, justices, where is it written that you have the final word? And don't give me Marbury versus Madison. That's a court case, a self-serving Supreme Court case. Where's it written? It's not written anywhere. Which makes the abuse by Kennedy and the other four even more egregious. Having seized power, not to be an independent branch of government, but to be the supreme branch of government of what were to be co-equal branches. The court now exercises power recklessly. And what the court did in June, 5 justices, was reckless. And our condemnation and our contempt should be for Anthony Kennedy and Breyer and Sotomayor and Kagan and Ginsburg. Follow the rule of law, Mark. Follow the rule of law. Well, then they should be impeached.
I just have a question for you.
Yes, thank you.
I don't understand why everyone's so upset about this lady who broke the law in Rowan County. She broke the law. She should, have to. I mean, she's a civil disobedience, and
Well, let me explain it to you. I've tried for 3 days, but let me give it a shot. In truncated form, if I may. Where did the Supreme Court come up with its decision that same-sex marriage is, first of all, a federal issue, secondly, a judicial issue, and thirdly, provided for in the 14th Amendment?
Yeah, I do agree that it should not be.
Okay, so the court ruled in a lawless and reckless way without any constitutional authority whatsoever. Do we agree on this?
Yes.
So why aren't people critical of the court? Why is it that we all have to just get in line and do what the court says? Is that what the Constitution says? Does the Constitution say that the justices have the final say on all this? Where does it say that?
I do not know.
Nowhere. And so this country we live in today, the government we have today, is not the government that was created by the framers of the Constitution. And the central government keeps seizing more and more authority to make decisions about our individual lives. This court had no power to make the decision that it made, and yet we empower it by just moving along, just accept it, move along. Meanwhile, it's the same court that was lawless in the Obamacare case, the same court that was lawless in the Arizona immigration case, and I can go on and on and on. I don't know what these justices think, what makes them so special and brilliant that their personal policy preferences have to be imposed on the American people. But you have the case of a woman who insists that her faith prevents her from doing this. She was elected clerk before the Supreme Court ruled. She was elected clerk before the 14th Amendment magically came up with same-sex marriage. So, if she should resign or be impeached, it seems to me Justice Kennedy should resign or be impeached. No, can't go there. Don't talk about that. All right, my friend, thank you for your call.